Hey guys, I thought I'd talk a little bit to you today about my experience with violent thoughts during medication withdrawal. So during my withdrawal from medication, which included diazepam, pregabalin, and at different points antidepressants as well, I had various violent sort of intrusive thoughts. These would include sort of random acts, like you're walking down the street and you just sort of like, I don't know what it was, but like I used to feel like I wanted to just commit violence. It was kind of weird. And especially after arguments as well, like any argument, like if someone made you angry, you'd be more likely to. Now, thankfully, I never actually did. I don't think. No, I didn't. But I think some people probably would. I think some people would. And I think some people obviously have. And that probably explains why there's like more violent crimes among certain people. So officially, most of these sorts of violent, intrusive thoughts, I think they're downplayed. Like I think, obviously when you go to a doctor and you first get put on the medication, there's no mention of violent thoughts during withdrawal whatsoever. In fact, most of the time there's barely any mention of any kind of withdrawal whatsoever. They won't even call it a withdrawal, they'll just call it a discontinuation syndrome. And when it comes to finally getting off it, there'll be barely any mention. And even if you do finally sort of manage to get that talk with a doctor, most of the time they're not going to mention anything about violent thoughts for sure. Now, the problem with some people, I think has happened to some people, is that obviously when they're coming off these medications, they have like a violent intrusive thought and they say that to a doctor. Now, no offense to doctors, but a lot of doctors in the Western sort of world don't really care about the patient, or maybe they do and they don't have time or whatever, I don't know, but they misunderstand that. They misunderstand what's causing it, and in some cases they'll want to prescribe even more medication. They'll want to prescribe antipsychotics and mood stabilizers and things like that. I think that's happened to quite a few people in society where they didn't used to get violent thoughts, and then something has happened in their lives, some event or something, a medication withdrawal or an event, a stressful event or whatever, and they've had these intrusive thoughts, and then a doctor has prescribed something, and then when they've tried to come off it, they've just had those violent thoughts come back with even worse effect. And so now then they get put on some other drug and they believe that, for years and years of their life, or forever, they believe that they can't function without it because they're too volatile without it. So in my case, all of these these intrusive violent thoughts I used to get are pretty much all gone. I remember having them during a lot during diazepam withdrawal, like during benzodiazepine withdrawal. And then I remember having them slightly, well, I did have them after I withdrew from, or sometime when I was on mirtazapine as well. But I haven't had any for a long time. Like I don't have any violent thoughts anymore whatsoever. And I'm not on any medication at all anymore. So in terms of what you can do to reduce them, in my opinion, one of the most important things, or at least in my recovery, was meditation. When I don't meditate, I gravitate towards things that I shouldn't, and I lose patience. And when you start to lose patience, you'll start to lose that tolerance for stress. And when you start to lose that tolerance for stress, you're more likely to end up in those situations where you might have violent intrusive thoughts or any kind of sorts of, thoughts like that. And so that's important, is meditation. I truly believe that meditation is important during any kind of withdrawal from these types of drugs. I think yoga could probably help. because it's a meditative sort of practice. Exercise probably helps, but I wouldn't rely on exercise alone. I think that there needs to be some kind of mental, like, I'm not saying exercise isn't mental exercise, but there needs to be some kind of patience building task, which is meditation. Another thing that's important is time. Time is important. So if you're in your first week, you're going to get this stuff. You need to just remember as part of the withdrawal. If you're part of your first month even, you're still going to get this sorts of stuff. You're going to have a low stress tolerance. You're going to snap at things. You're going to get violent at things. You're going to do all sorts. Even in your first year, that stuff will probably, I think it will probably slowly fade away. But yeah, if you're experiencing that, then it should fade away with time. And it definitely did for me. And I wasn't sure if it ever would. I thought maybe my brain was permanently damaged and that I'd always have these weird violent thoughts. Another thing that's important is avoiding any confrontations, avoiding any arguments. Obviously, sometimes in life that can't be avoided, but if there is an argument or confrontation, nowadays I tend to just accept whatever it is. That's not to say that like I necessarily allow it, but I just don't allow myself to get like, I try not to allow myself to become angry over a situation, which I think, again, the meditation is really important in finding a way to do that. And the thing is, when you come off medication, if I remember rightly, is based on the word meditation. Meditation is medication. It's a very similar word, it even sounds similar, it looks similar. And when you come off, you've ended up on this medication or whatever for a reason. And when you come off it, you can't just come off it and then go back to the life that led you to be on it in the first place. There needs to be a change. And people are always saying like, medication will change you and it will do this and that. And then like the idea with medication is like, you'll change. Like I think a lot of people get this sort of feeling of, they'll change after 8 weeks, after 12 weeks, after whatever, the medication will work and then they'll change. And then eventually they can come off it once the chemical imbalance is restored. And in reality, I don't think it's like that at all. I think that's just a massive misleading load of nonsense that we've fooled ourselves into believing. But obviously I can't give medical advice, so speak to your doctor. Another thing that I'd say is worth improving is your diet. I think there are certain things in modern diets that increase, like hyperactivity and impulsiveness. And so those would contribute to impulsive thoughts, and more so, again, like especially in the right situation, it could be violent thoughts, right? So that's another thing that is worth looking into. So I hope you enjoyed this little video, and if you have any questions about coming off medication or what I've talked about today, then feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.